Here's Trevor Lawrence on ACC Network this morning.
Just because we know Coach Swinney so well, we've been around him, and we know his family, we know how he acts on a daily basis. We know that, some of the ways he's been portrayed isn't accurate. But, you have to look at both sides. And I think sometimes, in situations like this, there's a lot of emotions. And people that don't know him, you just see a statement or you just see something that he says, and you might take it the wrong way. And, so I understand where people are coming from. But me personally, knowing Coach Swinney, I know the man he is, and I've never, doubted his character because I've seen, the way he lives every day. So that's his testament to me is how he lives.
That statement from Clemson quarterback Trevor Lawrence, the face of college football. Guys, bear with me here. I want to give you a little bit of news from this morning. Clemson University's Board of Trustees approved changing the name of the university's Honors College to the Clemson University Honors College effective immediately. That, of course, removing the Calhoun name. Earlier this week, some former Clemson players, DeAndre Hopkins, Deshaun Watson was part of this, announced they were petitioning the university to remove the name from the school's Honors College. Of course, he was a slave owner, and they did not want that influence on their school. All right, let's talk about what we heard Trevor Lawrence say. Dominique, I'll start with you first. What's your reaction to his comments?
Well, my first reaction is to be wildly impressed with Trevor Lawrence. Like, he seems to be a really mature young man who is smart and somewhat worldly beyond his years. So I like that. I'm sure his teammates love him and love to be on the team with him. As for what he said about Coach Swinney, I'll take his word for it. I don't know Coach Swinney. He's had a number of public remarks that rub me the wrong way, that go all the way back to him saying he would retire if college athletes started to get compensated, and that meant that they would be entitled. That stuff, he's been on the wrong side of so many of those issues in my mind, and coming up to now, I'm not going to pretend like I know him, but I do think that what happened with the Football Matters T-shirt, that's if it's ignorance, then that's a unacceptable level of ignorance to wear a shirt like that. That is obviously a play on, I think, the Black Lives Matter movement, and it seemed to be, whether the picture was taken recently or not, it seems to be something that you should be wise enough not to wear. But I do think that he's an incredible football coach, and I'm sure he's built some outstanding relationships with his players, but that does not absolve him from his responsibility as a leader going forward. And I think maybe he's just starting to be awakened to that, but I do think he has a responsibility to, particularly when he has predominantly black players, he has a responsibility to lead on that forefront also.
I'm glad you mentioned his comments on player pay, being vehemently against it, because that is a racial conversation. We're not having it yet, but that is the next step when we talk about systemic racism in college sports. But right now, we're talking about Trevor Lawrence, what he said about his coach. And I agree with you, Dominique. I think he's incredibly well-spoken. I admire him and all of the players, honestly, coming out and speaking so articulately about all of this. But he's speaking to his character, and I think that's a really important distinction, because sometimes when we look at incidents, whether it's not reprimanding the assistant who used the N-word in practice or wearing the T-shirt, we conflate criticism of how those incidents were handled with criticism of a man, his entire body of work, his character. They're two different things. I've talked about Coach Swinney. Laura, you've had a lot of conversations with him and his players, with DeAndre Hopkins, who loved him years ago. And that's great. I totally believe him when they vouch for his character. But again, they're speaking to who he is, not necessarily how he's handled these specific incidents.
Yeah, I'd love for him to be willing to answer questions. And Laura, I would love for you to jump in at some point, because you have probably more experience with Coach Swinney than the rest of us. And we can't say anything about his character because we don't know him to that level. But we can, and I think it's fair. It's difficult in this climate that it feels like if you say something bad about if you are judgmental about someone's actions, it feels like you are being judgmental about the entire person. Or if you are in favor of one thing they've done, it feels like you have to be in favor of everything they've done. I think it's important for us to understand that there's a difference, and we have high expectations for people who are in the public eye, like Dabo Swinney, and I'm sure he's done lots of great things for a lot of people, but it's important to understand that some of his actions and some of the positions he takes deserve ridicule.